Hello, guys. Thank you all for coming. It really means a lot. Like she said, I'm Mari White, and I'm a junior here at Mount Union. Anyone who attended the speech the last 2 years, thanks for coming again. I hope you enjoyed it and will enjoy it now. Today, I'm going to be talking about my difficult journey of having an eating disorder and the long process of recovery that I endured. If anyone has any questions once I'm finished, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope you all can take something away from this and have a new perspective and respect for those who have and continue to suffer from eating disorders. It was the summer going into my sophomore year of high school, right after my parents separated and right before my big sister would head off to college, when it all began. My family went from being the picture-perfect family to a separated household within the blink of an eye. My sister, who was my best friend, was moving almost 10 hours away and leaving me to deal with the pain of the separation all by myself. Not to mention my other big sister had already been gone for about 3 years. Everything was changing, and it seemed as though my life had spun out of control, and naturally, I panicked. I couldn't do anything about my parents splitting and my sisters being gone, but the one thing I knew I could control was the way that I looked. So I made up my mind, and I told myself I was going to lose 10 pounds by the end of the summer. I would work out numerous times a day in the scorching summer heat on an empty stomach. I would walk into the kitchen and stare into the fridge and cabinets and just wish that I could eat something, but I wouldn't even dare. I waited all day long until dinner time when I could finally eat my first and only meal of the day, and I would devour it within seconds. At this point, I honestly didn't believe there was anything wrong with me. I thought I knew what I was doing. I had it all under control. My sister would make small comments about me being anorexic, and I would comment back with, "I'm not anorexic, I eat every day. I never throw up." Little did I know what I was doing to my body. I continued on with this for the rest of the summer, but I told myself as soon as school started, I would go back to being healthy. But before I made it to that point, I found myself lying in a pool of sweat, staring up into my mother's eyes filled with fear. We had taken my sister down to school in North Carolina on a 9-hour car ride, and I hadn't eaten a thing. My mom kept trying to get me to eat whenever we stopped, but I just kept saying that I wasn't hungry. Once we arrived in North Carolina, I begged for us to go out to eat. I was obviously starving. So we went to the only open restaurant at this hour, the Waffle House. I had been waiting for this meal all day, so I ordered the biggest thing on the menu: pancakes, eggs, and sausages, all slathered down in syrup. For anyone else, this wouldn't have been a problem, but for me, who hadn't eaten in over 24 hours, it was a complete shock to my body. I immediately felt as if I was going to throw up, and as soon as I attempted to stand up, I passed out cold in the middle of the restaurant. I remember waking up to everyone staring at me and my mom in a panic. Eventually, the ambulance came and took me out on a stretcher. Everything from that night is sort of a blur, but the one thing I can remember clearly is how scared I was. I spent the night in the hospital being poked with IVs and being lectured by doctors, and that was the first time I ever thought maybe I did have a problem. Weeks went by and it was finally time for school to start again, and as I promised myself, I started the new year off with a new, very impressive physique and an even better attitude. I finally got my life back on track, and I was very happy with how things were going. Sophomore year ended up being great, and then the summertime came again. I didn't plan on going back down that road, but somehow I did. I began running with the cross-country team, which meant over 8 miles a day in the summer, and once again, I wasn't eating anything until late at night. I lost more weight, and I felt pretty good about how I looked, and it was honestly one of the best summers I had ever had, besides hiding the fact that I wasn't eating to my friends and family, who were all very concerned and suspicious. Resisting the urge to splurge on delicious snacks at our sleepovers, like normal teenagers do, was absolute torture. I knew it made my friends and my family very uncomfortable, but I had myself convinced that I had everything under control. The summer ended, and it was junior year, and like last time, I figured I would stop with the bad eating habits and get myself healthy again. Little did I know, I had lost complete control over what I had been doing to myself, and things only got worse. I continued with only eating once a day to begin with, but as time went on, I just wanted to lose more and more weight. I would give myself a goal, but then when I reached that goal, I would just set another one. I was never satisfied with my weight. While at school, I wouldn't eat anything. I would drink flavored water and chew gum to cut the edge of the hunger. My friends all asked why I wouldn't eat, and I always said I had a big breakfast, although I knew they never believed me. Then it came to the point where I didn't even want to have my one meal anymore. I just wanted to skip out on eating altogether for a couple of days. The problem with this was getting around my mom. On the days I was at work, I would tell her I brought food to my job or that I ate there, when really I would bring one granola bar, eat it on my break, and that was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the day. This went on for a couple of weeks until my hunger would get so bad that I just didn't know what to do. And this is where I knew I had completely lost myself. Getting through the school day on a completely empty stomach was a struggle. I was always in a bad mood and I never had any energy. My stomach would growl so loudly that I often had a hard time concentrating on anything. I would come home from school completely exhausted and absolutely starved. I would sit in my kitchen and look at the pantry door for hours, it seemed, until I finally opened it up and stared at all the food, wishing I could just eat something, until eventually I cracked. I would start with a spoonful of peanut butter and tell myself that that would hold me over until I could eat my granola bar later that night. But the hunger was so bad that I could never just stop there. I would devour one unhealthy snack to the next until I had eaten all types of crappy foods, and I felt absolutely terrible. I truly believed that my only option to feel better was to get rid of the horrible mistake I had just made, and so that is exactly what I did. Day after day, this would happen. I would raid my kitchen cabinets and then gag myself until I thought it was all gone. I hated everything about myself, and I hated who I had become, but there was no turning back. At this point, I had made myself very sick. I was about 30 pounds lighter, an all-time low weight for me, and I looked very frail and weak all the time. No matter what the temperature was, I was constantly freezing cold, my skin was dry, and I had lost the majority of my hair, which absolutely devastated me. I was always angry and upset, and I was very unhappy with everything about my life. I couldn't stand to look at myself in the mirror every day. My mom noticed, and my friends, but I always knew the right things to say to distract them or make them stop talking about it. I had become such a fantastic liar, it seemed. Things were constantly going downhill until I, without a doubt, hit rock bottom. I remember it like it was yesterday. My sister was home for Christmas, and my mom let me stay home from school so I could hang out with her. My grandma had cooked breakfast for us, so I was stuck in a situation where I was forced to eat something or somebody would know what was up. So I nibbled on what was on my plate, feeling guilty the entire time. My sister and I then went to the gym and worked out, and I felt a little better, but I could not get that meal off of my mind. So as soon as I had some alone time, I purged myself until I physically could not breathe anymore. I sat on my bathroom floor and just cried. I couldn't believe what I had become. I laid on my bed and something just wasn't right. I felt like I was stuck in a dream and I couldn't get out. I had lost myself. It seemed like everyone was out to get me and everyone hated me, and I completely panicked. I called my mom and told her I needed to talk to her, and immediately she knew something was wrong and she begged me to tell her, but I couldn't do it over the phone. I had never been so scared in my life. I honestly felt like I was lost in my own body. Later that night, I told her I thought I needed help. I told her I hadn't been eating and I felt like something was wrong. She told me we would wait out the next few days to see if I felt any better, and then we would go to the hospital. 2 days had passed and nothing was changing. I was only getting worse. I felt as if I was in a living nightmare and everyone around me was judging me for the way that I looked. I woke up that Sunday morning and went straight to the gym. My mom called me frantically and said maybe I shouldn't go with how I was feeling, and I told her I had to go. I thought it would make me feel better. So I did a lot of cardio and abs, covered in layers of sweats, and sat in the sauna for a very long time, which is something I often did in hopes that it would sweat off even more pounds. All the while hoping that I would feel some sense of normalcy, but nothing was working. I drove home in tears, secretly hoping that I would crash before I got there. I went straight to my bed, curled up in my covers, and cried. I was lost. I didn't know who I was or why I was even alive. I didn't know what else to do but cry. My mom finally came in and made me get in the car and took me to the hospital. The whole ride there I cried. It all felt like it just wasn't real, and I just kept saying, I just want to be normal again. Once they got me in and ran some tests and asked some questions, the doctors diagnosed me with severe clinical depression, anorexia, and bulimia. My brain was so deprived from the lack of food that I was literally losing my mind. I was extremely sick and very scared. The hospital discharged me, but not to return home, to go receive an assessment test at a depression center for teenagers. Once I was assessed, it was decided that I would start an outpatient program for 7 days. Normally, they would have made me stay there for 7 days straight, but since Christmas was only a couple of days away, they let me go home. We returned home for the night and I cried myself asleep, once again repeatedly saying, I just want to be normal again. The next day, I started treatment at the depression center named Laurelwood. Right off the bat, I was pissed that I had to be there. I felt like I was crazy and I was going to be thrown into a room with a bunch of crazy kids, and I was very angry. I sat by myself at a table and waited until it was time to begin. We began with introductions in our first group session, which was a time we spent every day sitting in a circle and basically sharing our feelings. As soon as people began to talk, I instantly felt relieved. I couldn't believe that there were other people who felt just as hopeless as I did. No one else had an eating disorder but me, but we all were very similar. We had all lost ourselves, and we felt as though we had no reason left to be on this earth. Something I would never forget is that first day of group. As I was waiting my turn, I looked up on the wall and saw a poster that caught my eye. The words on the poster said, "With hope, anything is possible." As this is now tattooed on my body, it really spoke volumes to me. That was the first time I thought maybe I had another chance to make my life worth it. I finished treatment at Laurelwood and made great progress, depression-wise. I was feeling much better with the help of a few prescription drugs and my family members who were finally able to smile again. I was finally talking to my friends again, who I had completely shut out, and I opened up and told my best friend everything that had happened. I began to eat more, not as much as I should have, but enough to please my mom, and things really seemed to be taking a turn for the better. This all came to an end far too soon. We were back in school and we had begun indoor track meets. It was the first meet at Kent State, and I was running the 4x2 100-meter relay. I got no more than 50 meters before my leg completely gave out. I had no clue what had happened, and I was very discouraged. Little did I know it could have been my heart that gave out, but thankfully it was only my leg. Days went by before it was finally time for me to meet with my doctor who specializes in eating disorders, Dr. Ellen Rome. I was so nervous I could barely talk, and I had every right to be. After listening to my heartbeat, testing my heart rate and pulse, and running an EKG scan, the doctor told me I was basically on the verge of dying. If I would have continued on the path that I was on, there's no telling how much longer my heart would have actually held on. My heart rate was so low that I was ordered to do no more than a walk until I put on some weight and got my heart rate back up to a healthy level. Of course, this meant I was no longer allowed to do track, which meant everything to me. I thought I had hit rock bottom before, but I didn't know that it could happen twice. At the end of my appointment, my doctor recommended me to an eating disorder clinic to start counseling. My therapist was Joanna, and the clinic was called Cleveland Center for Eating Disorders, or better known as CCED at the time. I can't even begin to explain how much I hated that place for a very long time, but little did I know they were only saving my life. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was my first time walking into the therapy offices, and right in front of me, a young girl was being rolled out of the building on a stretcher. Tears filled my eyes as I realized that that could have easily been me. In the beginning of my very first session, my therapist shared with me that she was shocked that the hospital released me with how low my heart rate was. The way she looked at me made me realize that I was very sick. The other part of the first session that I vividly remember is being told I had to go through refeeding. Refeeding is a process where someone who suffers from an eating disorder must regain most of the weight they lost, whether they want to or not. They aren't allowed to choose what they eat, when they eat, and how they eat. They simply have to follow their parents' rules. Since I was still 17 at the time, this meant I was going to have to go along with their torture until I was healthy again. Every single meal was a battle between my mom and I. I often cried the entire time I ate because I was so upset and truly thought that even the smallest amount of food would make me fat. On the worst days, my mom would have to give me anxiety pills just to get me through a full meal. I absolutely hated everyone during this process, especially myself. Imagine going from eating close to nothing every single day to literally having unlimited amounts of food shoved in your face and having no choice but to eat it. I was so sick in the brain that I truly thought I was getting humongous, when really I was only gaining 1 to 2 pounds every couple of weeks. It was a slow, painful, heartbreaking process that I never wished upon anyone. I spent days not looking at myself. I would shower with the lights off so I wouldn't be tempted to look down at my stomach. I hated myself more than I ever had before. With my depression taking an all-time high, I was placed on even more medications, which only seemed to help at times. I thought I was fat, I wasn't allowed to do the one thing I loved, and I honestly did not want to live anymore. This is where my depression took a turn for the ultimate worst. I felt so worthless that I didn't believe I should live anymore. I wished and hoped that God would just take me away. When I went to sleep at night, I would say to God, "I'm ready, just take me." And when I woke up the next morning, a sense of relief yet disappointment came over me. I just didn't know what to do anymore, so I resorted to self-mutilation. I don't know how it all started, but all I know is when it did, I didn't want to stop. Hurting myself took away the pain that I was feeling inside for that brief moment. Days went by where I locked myself in my room and wouldn't come out unless I was forced to. Each day I waited for my mom to go to bed so I could lock my bedroom door and hurt myself until I felt even the slightest bit of relief. Hiding my scars from my family and friends was the hardest part, although parts of me always hoped someone would see. I was desperate for help. I had started writing in a journal when I completed treatment at the depression center for a while, and for a while, it was really helping me until I got to this point in my depression. The positive messages that I used to write in the journal turned into angry rants expressing how much I hated life and how living just wasn't worth it anymore. On my lowest days, I would spend hours writing out goodbye letters to the ones I loved. After a night with my friends, we had been drinking a lot, and even though I knew I was too drunk to drive home, I did anyway, attempting to accidentally crash my car. Once I got home safely, I still didn't want to be alive anymore. I took a large amount of my prescribed sleeping pills that I had gathered over the months and kept in hiding, hoping that I wouldn't wake up the next morning. Thankfully, I did, because that was the day I decided to take my life back. I realized that I had so much more in life to look forward to. Outdoor track was approaching soon, and I wasn't going to let myself miss out on another awesome season with my team. I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started to take my life back. I started eating more and more, and over time, I started feeling like myself again. I wasn't angry at the world anymore, and I finally began to restore my faith in God and in myself. Each doctor visit became less painful, and my test results were improving drastically. Slowly, but surely, my doctor released me to run again, which was one of the happiest days of my life. I realized that God could have taken me at any time, but He gave me a second chance at life, and I wasn't going to miss out on it. I knew then that I had to stay healthy, not only for me, but for my family, who were absolutely amazing and supportive throughout the entire process. Despite the fact that my parents had just recently gone through a divorce, they worked together every single day as a team in order to help me recover, no matter how bad they didn't want to, and for that I will always be grateful. This all hit my mom extremely hard, and I thank God for allowing her to stay strong for me throughout everything. My mom also suffered from an eating disorder as a teenager, and she also attempted to take her own life. One thing I'll never forget is the look on her face when I told the doctor that I often thought about killing myself. I watched her heart break in front of my eyes. At the time, I didn't know it, but it was because she knew exactly what I was feeling, because she was once in my shoes. And thankfully, she overcame her struggles and passed on her strength and determination to me. My mom will always be my hero for that. With the love and support of my friends and family, I slowly but surely got back to my prime in track. My team and I had an amazing season, and life finally had meaning again. I finished the season with 2 new relay records and was awarded an amazing award honoring my strength to overcome such battles. I was healthy, my family was happy, and I was finally learning to accept myself. I continued with therapy and doctor visits, and for the most part, I was constantly making progress. Every once in a while, I would fall below the weight that they wanted me to be at, and I would feel defeated once again. But with every defeat, I picked myself up back again and told myself I was not going back to how I was before. My battle with recovery continues on, and it will continue for the rest of my life. I still have my bad days, but I have come a very long way from where I was, and I am beyond proud of that. At the beginning of my senior year, on my 18th birthday, I heard terrible news at a doctor's appointment. I had a bit of a relapse, and my doctor told me that I wasn't going to be able to go off to college. And look where I am now. In my 4th year of recovery, almost at the end of my 3rd year at the University of Mount Union, pursuing a major in psychology, doing the thing that I love most, and succeeding at it with an amazing group of people. The reason I give this speech every year is in hopes that I can touch at least one person who is hurting and suffering just the way I once did. Last year, a beautiful young lady was shown my video of this speech and was completely inspired. I moved her so much from sharing my story that she has chosen to speak out about her struggles as well. Words cannot begin to explain how amazing it feels to know that I was able to touch someone who experienced the same struggles as me. For a long time, I blamed myself for what was happening to me. I didn't understand that there was a chemical imbalance in my brain. A lot of people think eating disorders and depression is something somebody can just get over, but I assure you it is not. Having depression is just like having any other illness. No one chooses to go through these things. Most people never get the chance to take their lives back, but I thank God every single day that I did. I could have easily given up at any point, but I didn't, and for that I will forever be proud. For anyone who is or has gone through this, I want you to know that you are not alone. It may be hard, and some days you might not want to go on, but I promise, if you just stay strong, you can and you will make it. And never forget, with hope, anything and everything is possible.